Hi, my name is Bryn Hopkin, and today I'm going to go over my Ed to 11 class, what I learned from it, the life experiences that I had, what I will do in the future because of this class, and what I would possibly change about it. And this class, the Ed to 11 class, is Technology for the 21st Century. I'm an elementary education major, and so we're learning how to use technology in the classroom, the websites, the apps, the activities that we would use over technology. And that's what we've been covering. But this class honestly included so much more than that. And it was such a good learning experience for me. So I made a PowerPoint for this little presentation that I'm going to do. And I'll talk you through it, but I'm going to share my screen really quick. Those of you over podcast won't be able to see it. And I'm sorry about that, but this is also on YouTube if you want to go watch the PowerPoint. It's honestly just more for me, and so you can see some statistics at the end. But this is the PowerPoint that I made for my Ed to 11 overview. And the first thing that I wanted to start talking about is my favorite things from the class and what I learned, or what I got out of it, the things that I'm actually going to be using in the future. So honestly, the first thing was one of the first things we did in this class, which was caveat emptor. Hopefully I'm saying that right, but it means buyer beware. So we learned all these tools in order to help us know which website or app to buy for our classroom. So a lot of the websites and apps that we talked about are things like Class Dojo, where students get points based on their behavior. And things along those lines, and like teaching tools that we can use. But a lot of them, in order to get the best quality, you have to purchase a subscription, you have to pay for an upgrade, and that kind of stuff. And as a teacher, you don't want to be paying like $2,000 every year in websites and apps to use in your classroom. So caveat emptor was a tool that we can use and kind of like a process that we can take in order to find out if that's something we're actually going to use and that's going to be useful for our students and as a teacher. Which I felt like this was honestly really good for me, because I feel like a lot of times I'll get online and I'll see ads for all these websites and apps, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to try that. And then I get on and I end up not ever using it. And it's not helpful to me, and it's not something that I actually appreciate. And so to know which ones are worth buying is going to be really helpful for me in my future classroom. And the second one that I wanted to go over is being a warm demander. And this is basically when you set high expectations for children or students, but you love and support them through the process. This is something we talked about at the beginning of class. We did an activity, kind of like a survey, I guess, where our teacher asked us if our best teachers had set high expectations for us, or if they had been good teachers because they just loved us. But his point was that you need both in order to be a successful and a good teacher. Because we want to have high expectations, because that's going to motivate our students to learn more. That will help them to know that they can achieve something better. You know that they can learn and they can grow and they can become better people through your class. And the loving part is that you're going to help them through it. You're not just going to get upset at them if they get something wrong or if they make a mistake, but you're going to love them and help them understand what they can do to learn and become a better person. And so I think that both of those things are super important as a teacher. And it's just like Jesus Christ taught. And that's my main goal, is to be like my Savior, Jesus Christ, in my home as a parent and in my classroom as a teacher. And that kind of leads me into my third thing. And this was the biggest learning moment for me that we had in this class. It was kind of more of an overall theme. And it's that we can personally make education better. I myself can make a difference and can change it so that it can be good for each and every student that comes through my classroom. Something that we learned recently is about having a central purpose for our lives. And as I was thinking about what mine is, I went through a lot of different things. I thought about how my central purpose at home would be to build an eternal family, but at school it would be to focus on my students and to help them achieve success. Whereas in the gospel, or even in my life as a whole, it would be to center my life on Jesus Christ and doing my best to follow his example. Which I feel like everything that I talk about that I just mentioned, like being a good teacher and helping my students succeed, or being a good parent by building an eternal family, it all is centered on becoming like Jesus Christ, and centering our lives on him. So I feel like that is one of the best ways that I can make a change in education, is by being a warm demander, by being kind and loving, but also having high expectations that come into my classroom. And at the end, I put be innovative, because there are ideas that I have that I haven't seen implemented into classrooms that I think could really change the course of education. Having a mental health space, having like a wall of mistakes, just things that I don't think are often seen as something you would do in a classroom, but that I think could really change it and help students to progress even more. So I'm excited to become a teacher and to make that change, and to help my students to grow, and to help the people that I come in contact with learn more about Jesus Christ through my example. So now I'm going to kind of get into what I would change about the class, like the little things I would tweak, or what I would do differently in order to make class time more productive or effective. And I just have like a few examples of that. So my first change that I would make is kind of small, but in our class we did oral exams. So every week we would have a group of readings. We would have like 3 to 5 articles or videos to watch. We would take notes and answer some questions based off of the readings. And then the next day, on the Thursday that we came to class, we would have an oral exam. So our teacher would ask us questions and just make sure we kind of did the readings. But I noticed that we only ended up doing this a few times, and the TA would just randomly call on like 5 people, which was fine, but sometimes it took her a long time to like find people who were actually attending class that day, or who were like willing to come up and had done the readings. So I think it would be most effective on oral exams if the TA before class would just go down the attendance list and choose like 5 people before class started. And I feel like in the end, that would mean that everyone would get a chance at an oral exam, because I know there were some people that went more than once and some people that didn't go at all. So I feel like having that a little bit more organized would be a good idea. And then still having the same discussion as a class afterwards. But I actually really like oral exams, and I feel like they help us discuss the readings and help us to learn and get more out of them. I would just organize it a little bit better before class so that it didn't take so much time to find students to present the oral exam to us. So the second change I would make are on the attendance checks. So with attendance checks, we take notes during class, and then we take a picture of them and post them to like a Canvas, and then answer questions about the class period. I think the way I would change this is because I think they're really good, and it's a good way to take attendance and to see who is actually participating. But I think a good way to change this would be to have the attendance checks be there, but just have them take a picture of their notes and answer if they participated and what one thing was that they learned during class today, and just have them write like 2 sentences, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think you participated? That's 1 sentence. And then have the picture of their notes. And then the second sentence would be, what was the biggest takeaway from this class that you had? Because I feel like having those big paragraphs of writing for the students to do after class is just kind of a repeat, because usually the things that I'm answering in the attendance check are things that I wrote in my notes. So I feel like it would just be less time consuming and less of a waste of time if we were to just write a few sentences and post our notes onto the Canvas assignment. Okay. And then the last change is my consultancy change that I would make. So this is like my big change and my big suggestion on how to make the class better. And I have some statistics. This is my opinion based on statistics that Brother Pacini took at the mid-semester mark. So the biggest thing that I would change is the group projects. I do not think that we should get rid of them, because I think it's a really good opportunity for students to teach and for students to go over the things that they learned, and just to have that opportunity. Um, but the things that I would change is that they would go first in order. So like at the very beginning of class, we would just have the group come up and take all of the time that they needed for their presentation so that they could have their full time. But then only on Tuesdays would they present. And that's because I feel like they could take their full time on Tuesdays and it still wouldn't take away from class time and the class discussion. Because if they weren't to present on Thursdays, we'd be able to have a greater in-depth conversation and discussion about the things we read, about important things that Brother Pacini thought we should know, and just have like more in-depth debates or discussions or topics that we went into. Because on Thursdays, what this groups have been doing so far is basically an oral exam for the whole class, and just asking questions about the reading. But I feel like that's just a repeat of doing the oral exam. And I have found during class that the oral exams are a lot more, you get a lot more out of them than you do the group project, because a lot of times the group project, people aren't really invested, they're not paying attention, they're chatting with their friends, or they're not volunteering to answer questions or go up to the board. And it just hasn't seemed very involved to me, as well as the groups try to make it. It just hasn't really worked. So I would save that for the oral exam and then for discussing as a class. So save that day for teacher instruction and class discussion instead of a group presentation. But their main presentation time would be on Tuesdays. So they would have a little bit more time and they would do it at the beginning of class so that their time wasn't disturbed by any tangents or any explanations that were happening, whether students or teacher. And so this way, I feel like they could go a little more in depth about how to do the project, which I feel like is the most important part of a student presentation. I feel like a lot of people have said that on the mid-semester survey, the statistics I'm about to show you, a lot of people said that they were still confused on the projects even after the group presented, and they weren't really sure how the projects like applied to their classroom and that kind of stuff. And so I feel like if we were to give them more time on Tuesdays, maybe give them more guidelines of like what exactly to put in their presentation to make the project clear, and then have them apply it to life or the classroom, and just give them the full 20 to 30 minutes on Tuesday to do their presentation. The group would still get the same amount of teaching time and experience, but it would be in a lot more necessary way. And it wouldn't be just busy work for the group, I guess. So I think that that's the most important change that I would make. And I think that it would really change the course of this class. I feel like we could have richer conversations, but also still get the experience of teaching and of sharing our thoughts and ideas with the rest of the class. So that's what I would do for the group project. And here's some of the statistics that I took that helped me to kind of decide on this consultancy project. So I went through and I just did the 211 classes because that's the one that I'm in. And he asked what people would change about this class. And 28 people said to give the groups more time presenting. A lot of them said that they felt when they were presenting or when others were presenting, their time was cut off because the class would end. Or we had just talked about other important things and not gotten to them for enough time. And that also ended up leaving them confused about the project that we were supposed to turn in on Saturday. So 28, I think of the 65 people said that we should give more time presenting, which is quite a few. There were 4 of those people who said that we should only have students present on Tuesdays, which I think is such a good idea because that's the main content and the chunk of information that we need to receive from the group. And then 8 people, and these are all not including me, 8 people said to start the class with group presentations, which I feel like it's such a good lead-in, just at the beginning of class to be like, okay, this is the project that you need to do for this week, and this is what you're going to be doing. And to start the class with that so that people are clear on the project, so then we can move on into greater discussion as a class. And so I feel like if this many people said that we should change the group presentation, then it would be an important thing to change so that everyone can get as much as they possibly can out of the group presentations and out of the instructions for the project. And so that's the changes that I would make in order to improve our time effectiveness in Ed 211. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed my little presentation about my Ed 211 class, and I'm super grateful for all of the things that I learned in this class, and that I was able to have so many takeaways that I can use in order to become a better teacher in the future.